Hey everyone, welcome back. It's your guy coming at you straight from my studio with another no BS deep dive into what's actually happening in China right now. And let me tell you, this isn't the same tired narrative you hear from the mainstream media over here. The ones that have been feeding us the same Cold War style fear porn for decades. Unfiltered reality that millions of ordinary foreigners are discovering with their own eyes, with their own smartphones, and it's flipping everything we thought we knew completely on its head. So let's get straight into it, because there's been this absolutely wild development recently that nobody in our press seems to want to talk about in any honest way. The number of European tourists flooding into China has exploded, like we're talking a jump of more than tenfold in some categories. Just take flights from Finland to mainland China. Ticket sales alone spiked by 12.4 times. That's not a rounding error, that's a stampede. Major ports like Shenzhen, they hit the 1 million mark for foreign entries more than 2 full months earlier than they did last year, which is a staggering acceleration by any measure. Now, at first glance, you might think, okay, summer heat, they're just looking for cooler spots, right? That's what the lazy take would be. But if you actually stop and look closer, and I mean really look, you'll realize these people aren't just chasing air conditioning. They're chasing something much bigger, something that our media has been telling us doesn't exist. Some are heading straight to theme parks in Shenzhen. Others are diving headfirst into the electronics jungle of Huaxiangbei, that legendary market that's basically Silicon Valley on steroids, but without the entitlement. And then you've got this growing crowd hopping on trains and heading all the way out to the northwest and southwest. Places like Yanning in Xinjiang or Linji in Tibet, on paper, they'll tell you they're escaping the summer heat, but then you see them out there strolling through busy streets in the blazing sun, soaking it all in like they can't get enough cameras rolling the whole time. So what's their real angle? What are they actually after today? I'm going to walk you through 3 big questions that I think every American should be asking. Why are all these foreigners suddenly flocking to China in such huge numbers? What exactly are they secretly obsessing over once they get there? What are they experiencing that we're not being told about? And most importantly, as more and more outsiders step across that border, how does that shift China's appeal on the global stage? And what does that mean for America's position in the world? Let's start with the hard numbers, because the data tells a story that's pretty much impossible to ignore unless you're willfully blind. The National Immigration Administration just put out its latest report. And for the first half of 2026, we're looking at more than 22.91 million foreign entries into China. That's a year-on-year jump of 20.4%. That's not some fluke, that's not some statistical anomaly, that's real, tangible, on the ground growth. But the stat that really caught my eye, the one that made me sit up straight in my chair, is this, for the first time ever, the share of foreign visitors coming for sightseeing, leisure, and light business purposes has broken past the 60% mark. Just let that sink in for a second. Think back to what China used to look like to outsiders. Well, we were always told it was all corporate executives, major buyers, government delegations, people in suits with official agendas and briefcases. Now, more than 6 out of 10 are just regular, everyday folks, teachers, nurses, small business owners, retirees, families with kids, coming in to spend their own hard-earned money, eat local food, ride the trains, and just live the experience without any agenda other than curiosity. By mid-July, the foreign visitor traffic indexes in Shenzhen's Huaxiangbei and Yiwu in Zhejiang, both major commercial hubs that most Americans have never heard of, hit record highs. And here's the kicker. These people aren't following the old tourist playbook at all. They're not just hitting the landmarks, taking a few photos, and checking boxes. They're going full shopping mode like it's Black Friday every single day. Since summer started, these customized cooling gadgets marketed toward overseas tourists, like portable neck fans with semiconductor cooling tech, AI-powered mini spray fans, high-tech umbrellas, you name it, they've been flying off the shelves in physical retail stores so fast that suppliers can't keep up. The latest data shows that retail exports for these small electronics have more than tripled year on year. That's not a trend, that's a tidal wave. Once these foreigners get to the source markets and see just how cheap and ridiculously high quality everything is, I'm talking a fraction of what they pay back home for inferior products. They can't throw their money down fast enough. It's like they've discovered a secret level in a video game that nobody told them about. Now, the National Bureau of Statistics just updated their briefing, and it shows that in the first half of this year, sales at duty-free refund stores in major cities more than doubled. We're talking a 2.8 times increase. Just Guangdong province alone. Just one province. Mind you, saw small-scale retail exports to foreign individuals surpass 45 billion yuan. Convert that to US dollars. And we're talking over $6 billion. That's real money hitting the ground, flowing into local economies that have been starved of Western tourist dollars for years. And if you look at the hotel data, it tells the exact same story. Premium hotels like the Shangri-La in Shenzhen by mid-July. Pure vacation and experience-driven foreign guests made up 45.2% of their total foreign clientele. That's a major milestone because it breaks a 10-year streak of business travelers dominating the mix. That shift in spending patterns means foreigners are now pouring their money directly into local restaurants, mom and pop shops, street vendors, and smaller boutique hotels, which gives a very real, very direct boost to the local economy at the grassroots level. This isn't some abstract macro number. This is people's livelihoods being improved in real time. Since we're talking about leisure travel, the quality of the experience is absolutely everything. A few years ago, if you were a foreigner in China, you had a huge problem. You were practically crippled without WeChat Pay or Alipay. You couldn't even buy a simple street snack. You couldn't get a taxi. You couldn't do anything without cash. And even then, many places just didn't take it. It was a nightmare for the uninitiated, but the speed at which China has fixed that is honestly incredible. And I don't use that word lightly. The central bank and the Foreign Exchange Authority disclosed in mid-July that WeChat Pay and Alipay's foreign card binding service now not only covers all the major international card networks, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, the whole gang, but even supports quite a few smaller foreign currencies from countries you've probably never visited. In the second quarter of 2026, the transaction success rate for foreign tourists using mobile payments stayed stable above 98%. And in the first week of July alone, daily transaction volumes kept breaking new records like it was nothing. That kind of seamless, frictionless payment experience hits these visitors like a freight train. They're genuinely stunned. To us, scanning a QR code is no big deal. It's just everyday life. But to them, coming from countries where you still have to fumble with plastic cards or crumpled bills, this cashless instant everything system feels like stepping into a sci-fi movie that was shot 20 years in the future. They're blown away, and they tell everyone back home about it. And once the payment barrier is gone, the high-speed rail network starts flexing its muscles in a way that's completely rewired the tourism map. China Railway data shows that in the first half of this year, downloads of the English version of the 12,306 train app went through the roof in overseas app stores. We're talking hundreds of thousands of downloads from countries where people didn't even know China had trains that go faster than 80 miles an hour. What's even more impressive is that with upgrades at major ports and train stations, foreign passport verification now takes less than 3 seconds. That's as fast as locals swiping their own ID cards. I've been through enough airport security in my life to know that 3 seconds is practically magic. That level of efficiency has completely rewritten the tourist playbook. Before, the standard trip for a foreigner was just the big three: the Forbidden City in Beijing, the Bund in Shanghai, and the Terracotta Warriors in Xi'an. That was it. That was the whole menu. But now, thanks to high-speed rail and regional flights that are actually affordable and reliable, they're going completely off the grid. Since July alone, flights and train trips to places like Yanning in Xinjiang and Linji in Tibet, places most Americans couldn't even point to on a map. Places that sound like they're from a fantasy novel have seen foreign visitor numbers jump by 6.3 times year on year. That's not incremental growth, that's explosive. They're not just skimming the surface anymore, they're going deep into the heart of the country, experiencing local life in a way that was almost unthinkable just a few years ago. They're eating in local restaurants where nobody speaks English, they're buying produce from street markets, they're taking selfies with grandmas on park benches. This is the real China, not the one our media sells us. And it's not just transport. AI technology is also being deployed everywhere on the ground, and I mean everywhere, by mid-July. At the peak of the summer travel rush, over 100 major theme parks and scenic spots across the country like Splendid China in Shenzhen, which is basically a miniature version of the entire country, have rolled out multilingual AI real-time translation guides and bilingual ticketing machines. These systems serve more than 150,000 foreign visitors every single day, basically eliminating any language barriers that used to make traveling in China a headache. You can walk up to a ticket kiosk, speak into it in English, French, Spanish, whatever, and it spits out your ticket and directions without missing a beat. That kind of quiet, everyday competence says more than $1 million ad campaign ever could. It's the kind of thing that makes people rethink everything they've been told because it doesn't fit the narrative at all. Now, the big question, why did all these people suddenly show up at the same time, almost like they coordinated it? Look, we all know the international landscape is complicated right now. To put it mildly, here in the US, from the Trump era through today, we've had politicians on both sides, though mostly on one side, let's be honest, constantly yelling about decoupling, supply chain disruptions, and building walls both physical and economic. They talk about small yards with high fences and all that isolationist nonsense, so under normal rules of engagement, you'd expect China to respond in kind, build its own barriers, slap restrictions on everything, play the same tit for tat game that we've seen play out between other nations for centuries. But they didn't do that. Instead, they did the exact opposite, and I think that's a chess move that a lot of people in Washington still haven't wrapped their heads around. They rolled out this massive unilateral visa waiver and transit visa expansion program that has completely changed the calculus for millions of potential travelers. As of the 17th of July, the Visa-Free Friends Circle and the transit policy have undergone a huge upgrade. Some key ports have extended the transit stay from 144 hours all the way up to 240 hours. That's a full 10 days, which is an eternity for a casual traveler. That policy covers more than 54 countries, spanning every continent except Antarctica. The National Immigration Administration reported that in the first half of this year, over 65% of foreign entries were made visa-free. That's not a footnote, that's the headline. The China Tourism Academy also said that among all the visa-free countries, European nations saw the biggest jumps. France, Germany, Italy, and other developed countries recorded an average increase of more than 180% compared to last year. Let me repeat that. 180%, that's not growth, that's an avalanche. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has indicated that mutual visa-free agreements with more than a dozen other countries are already in the final approval stage. So the visa-free pool is only going to get bigger as the year goes on when foreigners see that they can just buy a ticket, hop on a plane, and stay for a full 10 days without any paperwork, without any embassy appointments, without any bureaucratic headaches. Who wouldn't be tempted? The Civil Aviation Administration's July route data proves it beyond any doubt. During the summer peak, passenger flights between China and Europe have not only fully recovered from the pandemic slump, they've actually surpassed 2019 levels, hitting about 120% of pre-pandemic volume. That's a massive rebound that airlines in the US can only dream about right now. Shenzhen Airport smashed its 1 million foreign passenger milestone a full 71 days ahead of last year's pace, which is just mind-boggling when you think about the logistics involved. And throughout July, at multiple foreign ministry press conferences, the phrase China travel kept coming up again and again as the hottest keyword. The one that journalists couldn't stop asking about. Their official stance is loud and clear. They want foreign business people, investors, and everyday tourists to feel like they can come whenever they want and stay as long as they like. That's a strategic move, pure and simple. That's using openness as a weapon, not a military weapon, but an economic and cultural one against the narrow-minded decoupling narrative that some folks here in Washington keep trying to push on the rest of us. So now, the next question, and this is the one that really gets interesting, once these foreigners actually arrive and start walking around, what are they seeing with their own eyes? For decades, and I mean decades, mainstream media outlets here in the US, whether it's CNN, the New York Times, Mississippi, NBC, Fox even, they've all built this thick, foggy, almost impenetrable filter over China. In their version of reality, China is this backward, unsafe, authoritarian wasteland where you can't even get a glass of clean water, where the air is always brown, where the police are around every corner, and where you're under surveillance 24/7. And honestly, we used to have a hard time pushing back against that narrative because the global megaphone was mostly in their hands, but that game is over, and it's over for good. As of the 17th of July, 2026, if you search the hashtag China travel on major short video platforms overseas, TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, you name it, you'll find that total views have already exceeded 42 billion. That's 42 billion with a B. And where did that content come from? It came from the more than 22 million ordinary foreign tourists who showed up in the first half of this year, each one pulling out their own smartphone, shooting raw, unedited, unscripted footage, and posting it for the whole world to see without any filter, without any agenda, without any government minders. And what are they filming? I'll summarize the trending keywords for you, because it's almost laughable how mundane and wholesome it all is. Eating skewers at 2 a.m. in a back alley without any fear, 30-minute food delivery that's faster than Uber Eats on its best day. Public restrooms that are actually clean and have toilet paper. Streets full of Chinese brand electric cars that look better than Teslas. And my personal favorite, grandmas dancing in public parks at 8 p.m. like it's a nightclub. A major international travel consultancy released a report in early July that directly contradicts the mainstream narrative we've been fed. According to their survey of thousands of recent visitors, over 80% of first-time foreign visitors said that the China they experienced was dramatically different. And I mean dramatically and far better than the image portrayed in their home media. The information fortress that Western outlets spent decades building, brick by brick, is being torn down by ordinary foreigners with nothing more than a smartphone and a curious mind. And short video algorithms are pouring gasoline on that fire in a way that nobody predicted. Foreign netizens love raw, unpolished, day-to-day content, the kind that doesn't look like a government ad, the kind that feels real and human. So in early July, cities like Datong, Jiamusi, and Dunhuang, these are third and fourth tier cities that never used to see many foreigners. Cities that most American tourists couldn't pronounce if their lives depended on it, saw their foreign visitor numbers double almost overnight. You've got some random British vlogger walking into a morning market in Jiamusi, a place that's freezing half the year, buying a giant meat-filled bun for less than $1, taking a bite, and giving a stunned thumbs up right into the camera with grease dripping down his chin. That one clip with zero editing, zero production value, zero sponsors, racks up millions of views overseas, and sends hundreds more people booking flights. That's grassroots reverse messaging at its most effective, and it's happening every single day now. The simple, mundane fact that ordinary Chinese people live safe, comfortable, normal lives. They go to work. They eat dinner with their families, they scroll their phones, they complain about traffic. That's the best counter-argument to all the fear-mongering we've been fed for the past 30 years. It's not glamorous, it's not dramatic, but it's real. And reality is the one thing that propaganda can never truly defeat. Now, is all of this just about eating good food, snapping photos, and buying little gadgets? Absolutely not. And anyone who tells you that is missing the forest for the trees. When foreigners feel safe and welcome, that's the foundation of trust, not the kind of trust that comes from a press release, but the kind that comes from walking down a street at midnight and not looking over your shoulder. And trust opens the door to cooperation, to partnership, and most importantly, to investment. Tourism is essentially the gateway drug to trade and capital flow. And that's the part that's really going to shake things up in the long run. Here's a concrete example that I think illustrates this perfectly. This summer, manufacturing-heavy provinces like Jiangsu, Jiang'an, Guangdong rolled out a new model that combines exhibitions with tourism. They call it Exhibition Plus Tourism, which is a terrible name but a brilliant idea. The results have been nothing short of remarkable. Surveys indicate that about 1/4 of leisure visitors, 25%, right off the top, also took some time during their trip to check out local light industry markets or cross-border e-commerce parks. A guy comes in to buy a cooling fan at Huaxiangbei, takes one look at the supply chain and shipping speed and pricing that's half of what he pays back home, and walks out with a wholesale order on the spot. That's the kind of on-the-ground business conversion that doesn't show up in press releases, but it's happening every single day. The Foreign Exchange Administration has already projected that China's travel service trade income in the first 3 quarters of 2026 will see strong double-digit growth. We're talking numbers that would make any finance minister's eyes pop. In the past, China always ran a deficit in services trade. They were spending more abroad on tourism and services than they were bringing in, but now they're pulling in foreign money at a record pace and improving their overall balance of payments. And the deeper validation comes from investment data, which is the real story here. In July, new foreign invested enterprise registrations in coastal provinces and popular tourist destinations actually trended upward despite all the talk about decoupling and pulling out. That's the full macro loop right there. Tourism builds trust, trust attracts investment. And investment strengthens the entire economic foundation. It's a virtuous cycle, and it's happening right under our noses. So let's be clear about what we're seeing here. This wave of China tourism is not just some random trend or a flash in the pan. It's not about selfie sticks and souvenirs. It's a strategic ace that Beijing is playing in a very complex, very competitive global environment. It's about stabilizing supply chains, rebuilding global trust in their system, and quietly shifting the narrative in their favor. All while the old guard here in Washington is still trying to sell us the decoupling story that's falling apart in real time. But the data doesn't lie, and the millions of foreigners who have gone and seen for themselves aren't coming back with the same horror stories they were told to expect. They're coming back with photos of dumplings, videos of bullet trains, and stories about how nice everyone was. All right? That's going to do it for today's deep dive. I know this was a long one, but this is a story that deserves more than a soundbite. I hope this gave you a new perspective on what's really happening on the ground. Beyond the headlines, if you found this useful, drop a like, leave a comment with your thoughts. I read them, even the angry ones. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you all in the next video. Stay sharp, stay curious, and always question the narrative. Peace out.